Our guest today is Dr. Kiran Mehra-Kerpelman, Director, United Nations Information Center for India and Bhutan. She's at the vortex of catalyzing change and spreading the message of United Nations across to rural areas in India. Recipient of various awards like the Gandhi Seva Medal and the Ambassador of Peace Award, it is indeed our pleasure and privilege to have you here with us today. We are indeed indebted to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. It's a privilege for me and an honor to be here with you today and bring you the message of the United Nations.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining us once again. Before we get into the United Nations message and take this forward, I'd like to ask you a few questions about your early life. Take us through your early life and schooling.
Well, my early life and schooling was in this wonderful country, India, and I was at the Convent of Jesus and Mary School, after which I went to Lady Sri Ram College. And it's fantastic when I've come back, everybody seems to, or many people seem to have that combination, and I've been able to network with them. So after college, my mother, by the way, is a doctor with the World Health Organization, and that's what took me away from India in the first stance. She was posted to Geneva in Switzerland at the WHO, and eventually I joined her. And that's where the second part of my life started, which is ending up with the United Nations.
After school and LSR, what subjects did you pursue firstly in college, and then what did you do abroad?
In college, I did English honors, and later on, I also delved into subsidiaries of political science. And when I was in Geneva, in fact, even before I went to Geneva, I was very keen on learning French. I love languages, and so I had started learning French, and that was perfect because Geneva is French speaking. So it gave me a chance to continue my studies in French when I was there and get all the diplomas and whatever was necessary. And that's how I continued studying. And I also got very interested in computers because at that point in time, computer studies, which is information related, and as in French they would say informatique, which is computer studies, were very rare to find in one person. And I just happened to be the person who managed to get those qualifications, and that helped me a lot in furthering my career.
You said you had English honors. So who is the author or poet who actually inspired you and, you know, took you to greater heights during your tenure as a college student?
Well, I would say that, you know, I love the American writers, and To Kill a Mockingbird was one of my favorites. And I think that's because those were new to us. In school, we really had most of the British writers. And as far as poetry is concerned, you know, our good old Tennyson and Shelley, those were the
even
poets.
Wordsworth.
Wordsworth, of course, yeah, Wordsworth. So I would say that, yes, they inspired me. But interestingly enough, I actually got stuck. This is a little anecdote. I got stuck in college, if I may say that, with higher Hindi. The reason being because in school, I had opted for Hindi and I didn't know I would have to take it all the way. And I just loved the Hindi literature. For example, one of my favorites was Bhagwati Charan Verma, and I didn't know about, you know, Hindi literature in that way. And I was very influenced by that. I was intrigued. I was really interested.
And even Munshi Premchand.
Munshi Premchand, although I have to say Munshi Premchand, as at that age, you know, you find him
a little too high.
Well, no, not just a little too high. He writes in a way that can be a little off-putting for people of that age. It's all very dark, dismal.
Yes.
But I would say that later on, even when I was in Geneva, I actually found a school where they had A-level in Hindi, so that I could continue to study some of that Hindi, and I found an Indian person who was able to give me coaching. So I really enjoyed that. That was a long time ago.
Tell us, Dr. Kiran, if you saw life through a gender lens, how tough has it been, you know, story of your life being a woman?
You know, I think I've been one of the lucky ones, and that is because I was born in a family where there was no difference between a girl and a boy. My grandfather, my Nana, was Director Health Services, a doctor in Punjab, and for him, education was very, very important. And it didn't matter whether it was the girl or the boy. And in fact, as I said, my mother was a doctor. You know, we had several women in the family who were studying and got to heights. And I think that from that point of view, for me, there was never any issue that I would not be educated or that they did not expect that I would do something good with my life as far as a career is concerned. And since my mother was a career person, she was also in the Ministry of Health and Family Planning before she left for Geneva. There was no question for me that I was going to be a working woman, although I say all women are working women.
Yes.
But I'm saying that from the point of view of working outside the house. So there was no question. And I think the only time I think I really felt this gender gap was when I was doing computer studies in Geneva, and I used to go for evening classes. And it was interesting that there were about 22 persons in the class, and I was the only girl. And it was a strange feeling, but then I have to also admit, and this is nothing to show off about, but in the end, you know, after having been told that, well, you know, this may be a male-dominated subject, I actually came out first. So I told them that this is not male-dominated. You've got to let women have their chance. So I have been lucky.
And who inspired you more? I mean, you've been talking about your mother. Tell us something about your father, ma'am.
My father, he was in the army. And so, you know, from one point of view, we could have been army brats. So we had a lot of fun actually going around to different places. But because my mother did not want our education to be affected in any way, and since she was with the ministry, we always lived in Delhi. But it was wonderful because I know what army life is. I know what it is when your father is, you know, in the front, and he's in the front fighting. And also when he comes home once in a while. In fact, another anecdote, I remember I was very young then, and my father came home. You know how the military people, they just once in a while they show up when they get 2 days furlough or something, annual leave. And when he showed up and at the door, and I went running to my mother and I said, Mommy, the uncle who comes sometimes is here.
Oh God.
So, you know, that's something my father never let me forget, but it's wonderful.
We've heard you're a wonderful painter and you do stunning landscapes and you're an accomplished artist. So this flurry of creative genius that you have in you, do you get time for it on a regular basis given your tight schedule, or how do you follow up?
You know, you've hit the nail on the head with the problem for working women, women who work outside the house, and also women who have a lot to do inside the house because, you know, taking care of the family. And I think this flurry was there in my early life, and I totally let it go because I just couldn't find the time between wanting to study or, you know, have more knowledge on things, then working, and eventually getting married, bringing up children, and at the same time having my professional life. I just didn't give a lot of time to it. And it is when I came to India on this posting, and we can talk about that this flurry again, and it blossomed again. It blossomed, and could be because I was back in the country of my birth, and I was surrounded by warmth. I think it might have had something to do with it.
something about your family, your children.
I have a daughter and a son, and well, they're both grown up now, and my daughter got married a couple of years ago. She's also living in Geneva, which is basically my home. And my son is working in the United States, although his heart is in Geneva. And his heart is in Geneva, his heart is in the United States, and his heart is in India. So I've tried to tell him, you can't really have your heart in three places. It's difficult, but that's how he is. And it's because my husband is American. We're a really global family.
I know.
So we are global citizens, and from that point of view, my children have been brought up to be global citizens.
One day in your life, if you look at it, one day in the life of Dr. Kiran Mehra-Kerpelman, what is it like?
Well, in India, it has been a whirlwind because it is quite different elsewhere, but I will let you know here. As you said, I'm working at the United Nations Information Center for India and Bhutan. I'm the spokesperson of the UN Secretary General. And our mandate is far and wide. Our mandate is, one part of the mandate is to bring the messages and the campaigns of the Secretary General to India and position them here. And the other mandate is to take the best practices of what is happening in India and push them out to the world. So when I came here, for me, what's important is creating awareness, changing mindsets. Unless you're able to create awareness and change mindsets, you cannot expect to have success in anything. And with 1.3 billion people, you know, in this country, and there's the Bharat, and then there's the India. So perhaps, you know, I didn't want to just preach to the India. That's preaching to the converted. I wanted to throw the net out further. And this is what we started to do, is to take the United Nations to the grassroots. I mean, we already have 28 agencies, development agencies of the UN working here. So it's not like the UN is not in the grassroots, but not in a similar way. I wanted to take it as information, to show people what is possible, what we are doing, and how they can link to what we are doing, and how together we can perhaps dream towards that better world for all that we talk about.
We'll be taking a short commercial break now, and when we get back, we'll talk to Dr. Kiran Mehra-Kerpelman about the vision that she has for UNIC. Welcome back. We are in conversation with Dr. Kiran Mehra-Kerpelman, Director of the United Nations Information Center for India and Bhutan, and she is telling us about her vision for the UNIC as she catalyzes change and spreads the message of UNIC to rural areas. Ma'am, tell us and tell our viewers about UNIC as it was in 1947 to UNIC as it is now. I believe it was one of the first few offices that was established in India.
You're absolutely right. The United Nations Information Center opened its doors in India 7 months even before India got its independence.
Oh, great.
So that actually shows that we have a special relationship with India. Later on, there were other UN agencies that slowly came up, but UNIC was there, and UNIC is here now. And it has gone through a lot. It has lived through the history of the country since then. Whenever something happened in the country, we were there. UNIC was there, working with the NGOs, working with the and working very closely with the media, because that is the main bread and butter of the United Nations Information Center, is to provide information. And of course, we work very closely with the media in that. We work very closely with academia. We also have been working with universities. I mean, the list is so long, because we work with schools with children, because especially now youth is a segment that is extremely important. And this year, the United Nations has celebrated its 70th anniversary. So coming from 1947, I think UNIC has had its hand in very important things, including setting up of the National Human Rights Commission, because I think the UNIC catalyzed a lot of work so that we would get to that point. And I think that what is important to note is that it is the political, if you wish, it's the political side of the UN, because the other UN agencies are almost all developmental. And so we get to do things that are quite different sometimes.
And very interesting.
Very
as well.
interesting. And we try to lead to change through small steps. We don't take long steps, big steps, because we are small. We're a small office.
I think that's a very
but
humble way you're putting it across,
No.
because what I've read is something which really, I was overawed and overwhelmed by what I read, was that ahimsa is so central to our worldview, ma'am. But how many of us follow it? So keeping that in mind, you have launched a movement and a campaign where you have these beautiful peace marches holding aloft the ideals of Mahatma Gandhi and his cherished vision. I mean, can you tell our audience about, these peace marches? And I've read somewhere about peace autos as well.
Oh, yes. Yes, this is very close to my heart. I think that, we talk about Gandhiji. We also do a lot about Nelson Mandela, who was very close to Gandhiji. And we do things also on his birthday. That is Nelson Mandela's birthday. But our 12-day Peace to Non-Violence campaign is an annual one where we let any NGOs or schools or any other entities who want to take part in anything that is to do with spreading the message of peace and non-violence. They come to us, we put together events. It could be debates, it could be street theatre, seminars, street theatre by schools. It could be really anything, and essay and debate competitions. And we try to bring together as many people from even beyond, of course, Delhi. We try to catch them through our association with something called UNAs, that is UN associations, which are under the umbrella of the Indian Federation of UN Associations. And this is fantastic because we are very small, so we are able to use them as our arms to go beyond just our little area.
And you impact the youth in, giving them this kind of meaningful ways to harness this energy and to take this message of Gandhiji forward.
Absolutely, because the youth, they want to do something. They all really come to us and say, what is it that we can do? Give us some guidance. So we work with a lot of NGOs. One of them is the Gandhi Global Family. They are really, really into doing things with Gandhiji and youth all across India. We've done many things with them, including bringing sports to children in J&K, or just having international youth hostel. We have conferences for people who are visiting. I think youth is very keen. They just need that guidance. They need someone to tell them, this is what you can do. So yes, we work with youth, but we also try to work with universities, let's say. We'll work with librarians, and you'll ask me why. Because we want to talk to librarians to tell them that there is so much happening in the world to do with peace. So here are the books, here are the new databases that you can go to where you're looking for studies, peace studies, to tell your readers. So, these are really extremes. And in between, there's all the usual that we will do. Some of the most exciting things have been with school children and others to be at the Saket City Mall, let's say, having some sort of an event, or working with NGOs who work with on disability. I'd actually like to say people with different abilities. Or it could be also film festivals that we've been doing. And I've also been on the jury for the first international film festival for children, like a fully fledged, and this was in Lucknow. And it's the list is so long.
Endless,
I could keep it is endless. And of course, offhand, I could think of some of the main things, but it's not always the main things that get us the best awareness raising. It's sometimes the small things
and the insignificant
and the
ones,
insignificant to some. And we have marched down Water Day. We've marched down India Gate. I've been with the War Widows also on
of the Army
of the International Women's Day, or with the Vrindavan Widows, as they're called, with the different NGOs. It is something that's gone straight to my heart.
And it's added a new dimension to, UNIC as well, the way you've been looking at things. Ma'am, about these festivals that you keep holding, I'm really intrigued to know about, this weekend festival. It's so intriguing. You had this International Mountain Day on 11th of December, if I'm not wrong. So, what is this weekend festival?
The We Care Film Festival is actually something that we partnered with an NGO that works on people with disabilities and those issues, and to create awareness. So we started this online. We have people from any walk of life who can send in films that they make. It can also be a film made on your mobile phone. We don't want to limit it to only professionals. And this deals with anything on the issue of disability, but not negative, to show that people have extra abilities when they are less able in some other area, and what it is that they feel, what it is that they can do, and basically take this awareness to schools and colleges and other areas. And that has been fantastic. I can just tell you that when I have taken them to schools, the students, when you start showing the films, they're fidgeting and there's noise. And by the time the first film starts,
absolutely quiet,
absolutely quiet. And at the end, I do a Q&A. And the questions I get from the students, they are so moved. And it's not moved by pity. It's moved by the fact, they're moved by the fact that how is it that till now we didn't know all this, or we didn't think of all this? Ma'am, can you give us these CDs? We would like to go and show them in other communities and so on.
And probably they also realize, ma'am, that how fortunate they are to be in whatever situation they are compared,
You're absolutely right, because I would like them to think that. I would not like to tell them that. No child likes to be told.
Count your blessings.
Count your blessings. And they, I think, are able to figure out themselves when they see these films.
A lot of children are so enthused about MUNs, which you have been, giving certificates to and holding so many of these. Now, in all the major schools and colleges of Delhi, universities in fact also, you have the MUN. So, is that a way of bonding more with the UN, and how?
Well, first of all, for those who don't know what MUNs are, they're Model United Nations. And it's a simulation of the General Assembly of the United Nations, where the committees meet and everything is done exactly by the book. This is something that was started a long time ago, but I think when I came to India, I realized what a great place this was, where students were doing MUNs, but they needed a lot of guidance, and we provided that with help from headquarters New York. So we actually are able to guide and control the proceedings of all these Model United Nations, and they're not happening just in the Delhi NCR areas. They are happening all over the place. I have been to MUNs in Maharashtra, I've been in Chhattisgarh, I've been in the Northeast. I was in Shillong, where we held one, in Orissa, in Gujarat. So we are trying our best also to take them to smaller schools, where of course they cannot do them in the same big way, grandiose way, but it's a start for them, and then they can plug into the mainstream. It is amazing.
I've attended one, so I agree with you absolutely. I attended one last month and it was superb. I mean, they had this mini security council, and they had all these, they even added a youth parliament, where they had whatever's going on. It was wonderful watching it, and how much the youth is inspired and is learning by this kind of an effort is commendable.
One of the main reasons for these MUNs is so that the youth can research and they can find out more about not just the United Nations, but look at it, the delegates don't always get their own country. I mean, in fact, almost never. There'll be one delegate from India. All of them have to represent different countries. So they have to research about those countries.
And they learn.
And sometimes people didn't even know where that country was on the map.
Absolutely.
So it is a fantastic learning experience. It's very good for communication, because they learn how to communicate, and they learn how to be peaceful together, because you can imagine when these debates go on, if you are not diplomatic and peaceful, it can get into difficult times. So I would say that the MUNs is a fantastic way of also
And you have the voting
creating.
motions, right?
There are voting motions. It's all done properly, and in the end you have the resolutions and everything, which are then presented to us at the UNIC, and we formally pass them on
And
to
then there's so much
New
you
York.
perhaps can also learn at UNIC from resolutions that children make, because they have a very fertile mind and they can come up with the right solution at any time.
Exactly. And I think that also children dream a lot.
Yes.
And sometimes, you know, we want to dream big. We want to dream big because what says that we can't make that dream come true? I think that's what we all live on, dreams. So I think that it's a fantastic way to make children ready to be leaders of tomorrow.
We have so many movements in our country right now, like Swachh Bharat, and we have Beti Bachao. So what are your views on empowering women?
Oh, I think that empowering women is one of the best things that could ever happen anywhere, because empowering a woman means you're empowering the family, and which means that you are in fact making very strong citizens for tomorrow.
How true.
And empowering women would not just be education, but I think in empowering women you need to also think about ending the violence against women. And the United Nations is all for that. We fight for that. UN Women, which is another UN organization, has been working very strongly on that. And there are other UN organizations like UNFPA, UNICEF that work very strongly for children in the Beti Bachao. And also we have a lot of children's programs. And I think you mentioned Swachh Bharat. Of course, Swachh Bharat is what it's called today. But you know, sanitation issues and issues of, well, let's say there's the International Toilet Day now. We work very hard. In fact, I had mentioned Dharavi to you earlier. I was in Dharavi on the first international, the World Toilet Day. And we, together with some local NGOs there, we inaugurated the girls and the boys toilet in a slum school. And it was really worth something. You know, we just sit and think of the world the way we think it is. But we forget that it's not that. There are places where we need to make a change. And it was wonderful showing them what they should do, how they should keep it clean. I promised that they were going to keep those as spruced up as possible. It was wonderful. So I'm just saying that there are so many international days.
And violence against women, even in their workplace, I feel needs to be looked at.
Absolutely. Violence against women is something that has become endemic, and it's a real shame. And I think it's a worldwide phenomenon. And we really need to do something about it. And I think a lot is being done. But we need to keep the momentum going.
Yes.
That is the problem. The momentum, if you stop the momentum going, then
it shouldn't slacken at any
It slackens, and then you have to start again, you know, like snakes and ladders, you go down and you have to start coming up again. So I really feel that this is something that and again, there's the He for She campaign of the Secretary General.
Yes.
It's to show that men need to be part of these campaigns. You cannot have women come and say stop violence against women. The men have to understand. It's the mothers who have to understand how they bring up their son. You know, it is all a question of sanskar, where you start, how you teach somebody. So I think all that is a big package, a lot of work required, but every citizen has to be responsible in this.
International Migrants Day. So can you explain this to our viewers, ma'am?
You know, the world is full of migrants. I mean, when you talk about India, you said, oh, where are the migrants? Of course, many of the people were migrants of 1947. And India has always opened its doors, you know, whether it was Bangladesh and whether it's also refugees from Myanmar. And I think world over, right now there is an issue with Syria all the migrants are coming into Europe. But people are finding solutions because, you know, somebody, if you think about this, 4 out of 5 migrants are actually always in employment. When they come in, they work hard and they find employment. They're not a burden on society. But the problem is that till such time as they get to that point, they need a lot of support. They need our help. They need to be able to live in dignity. Why did they leave their country? Many of them left because of war, because, there was persecution. And we need to think and thank ourselves that we are in a position, we have the freedom.
You rightly mentioned that pain, that anguish that the person would feel has to transcend to,
And children in all this are really the ones affected the most, because they don't understand why this is happening to them. And I know that UNICEF is also doing a lot. Of course, there's UNHCR, High Commissioner for Refugees, and just all the agencies. World Food Program is helping with the food. I mean, everybody's doing their bit. But it is important to note that migrants have always enriched the countries that they have migrated to. In general, that is it.
Tell us about your views on education and literacy, because I read the figures just yesterday that if we make 0.1 contribution towards education in India, 0.1, our GDP would go up by 23% in the next 40 years. Is that so? And can you tell us about what movement the UNIC is taking to make this kind of a success?
Well, without going into the nitty-gritty of figures, I can tell you that we all agree that education is very important. I mean, we say that if somebody is educated, they are able to make decisions for themselves. They know. Let's talk about voting. We talk about being a democracy in India, but a real democracy needs people to be educated so they can actually understand what they are voting for. I'm not saying who. I'm saying what they are voting for. What is it that they want in their life? What are the programs? They should be able to, find out what are the balances that they have in this, the different parties, etc. But then you also talked about literacy. Very important. I believe that India now, with its push in education, has at least another 250 million new literates that are coming down the line. It is the one country in the world where print publications have risen, have increased, whereas everywhere else, because of problems, because there's online, people have had to close down newspapers. But in India, apparently, the numbers just increase. Shows you that it's a country that loves its reading.
And it's progressing.
Progressing, loves its books. And so it's important that we continue to push for literacy. But putting literacy and education together, you talked about the GDP increasing. That's fine. But what's the point in continuing to educate people if they don't see a light at the end of the tunnel?
I was coming to that. Values.
We need values, but we need to find employment avenues for them. When you have financial growth, GDP growth, it doesn't mean job growth always. And this is something that the ILO, International Labour Organization, has been saying. It doesn't translate into jobs. So it's good that now there's the skills programs that are starting, the vocational training, because vocational training is really important for a country like India, because I think there are skills that need to be brought to people that will lead to employment.
I think we are linking up, like Digital India and now Skill India, Saksham India. We are linking up these skills as well to make this point that you very rightly said. Why would a person in a village like to come to you and take education from you, so-called education, unless it rocks his or her life, in the sense gives him or her employability? Very rightly so. So in your efforts at UNIC, when you interact with villagers and with the rural population, what is that one message that you send across, ma'am?
Well, the one message has to be that, they need to educate their children, and by whatever means. But unfortunately, I've heard this from them very often, that they are ready to send their children to schools, but that they feel, and they've heard and they've experienced the fact that some of the schools are not giving the children the education that they would like their children to get. So we try very hard to work together with different entities, NGOs, even with the government and with the private schools, and we work a lot with the government schools also, to try to explain to them what it is that they need to bring into their education to make it holistic. You know, you can't just do ABC and so on.
And inclusive.
And inclusive. And inclusive is very important. It's happening. It's happening. And I think that the number of people today, the students that you see who are topping, you can easily see that that inclusive is happening.
What do you feel are the key challenges, ma'am, to UNIC and your role as, a medium of change, getting this transcending across boundaries and making people aware of, human rights and such issues? What challenges do you find, ma'am?
You know, there are a lot of challenges, and that's great, because if there weren't challenges, then we would feel that we had nothing to do, right? The challenges, as you say, of education are there. The challenges of empowering women, poverty. Now, ending poverty is extremely important. The Millennium Development Goals did, by 2010 globally halve poverty. But now with the Sustainable Development Goals, that we have 17 Sustainable Development Goals, they have 169 targets. That means, anybody can find a niche in there to meet a challenge. So this challenge in education could be Beti Padhao, or it could even be, what kinds of education that we need to have for the children. The value-based, but also, when it comes to languages and other things, let's make the children of India employable around the world. And when I say children of India, I mean everybody. We're not just talking about some of the schools where there might be English medium. Even the others should be given that chance. But the challenges, I think, of violence against women, the challenges of, the girl child, the challenges of human rights. And, human rights, women's rights are human rights, children's rights are human rights, child labor is a big thing. We need to, like Kailash Satyarthi ji has been pushing, take the children out of work. They need to have a bachpan. In fact, I think his
Bachpan Bachao Andolan.
Yes. And you really need to do that. I was in the first global march against child labor in Geneva, where Kailash Satyarthi ji came, and the International Day, the World Day Against Child Labor was instituted by the International Labour Organization, because I worked there, and I was there in the first march. So I think that the challenges are many, and it's very difficult for everybody to say the government should do this, the government should do that. Today, look at the pollution problem. Everybody's suffering, everybody's coughing. Somebody needs to do something, but the citizens have to also come forward and do their bit. And so that way, when you say nation building is everybody coming together.
My other point is about this conference that we've had in Paris on climate change. How far do you think it's going to affect lives in India and Bhutan and all the world over? As this is a problem which is a global problem that's come up. I mean, we've had China and Beijing, all these places doing things about it, and yet not really successful. So we've had a resolution now in Paris, and what is all that about?
Well, I think the problem is that this has been going on for many, many years. The Stockholm conference, where Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, she's the one who started this thing about poverty, and she also talked a lot about, people talked about pollution and other things, and we just feel that maybe even though everybody was doing their bit, maybe enough was not being done towards a focused result, the target. Now, I think the world knows that we don't have time. We don't have time because what we've done with this planet, if we are probably the generation, the only generation now who can do anything to save it. And you know what Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has said, that when you usually make a plan, you make a plan A and you have a backup plan B. But there's planet A, there is no planet B, not to our knowledge.
Beautiful.
So we really need to do what we can to save the planet and leave it better than we found
it.
Cleaner for the future generations. Yes. And I think this is the time people have come together, and it has been very tough. There are still issues that need to be ironed out. But I think the awareness which has risen now in people's minds, because it's not just governments, but people now understand, whether it's to do with plastic, whether it's to do with coal, whether it's to do with
water,
people understand that we need to do something. We need to plant a tree. We need to plant a tree where we can nurture it. What planting a tree means to the world. All these things, I think the awareness is now great. And that is half the battle won. Now we need to implement it. We know what we have to do, but we have to go forward and do it.
Ma'am, can you tell us about some more challenges that, you face at UNIC when you spread this kind of a message to the world over, or even in India in your capacity? Any other issues that you'd like to talk about?
I think, when we go really down to the grassroots, it's difficult sometimes. For me, it's a challenge to talk to people about other things when I can't go beyond the roti kapda makan. There are people who are really, really in poverty, and their question very often is that, what are you all doing for us? And it's difficult to explain to them that you are part of...
There is so much happening.
There is so much happening. You're part of a huge nation, which is part of a huge continent, which is part of a huge world. But that every little thing we can do, we are trying. And the rest, of course, is also up to everybody to try to make their life better. The other thing is also when I've been to sometimes conflict areas where the children have lost, disaster prone, or children have lost their father or parents. It's very, very difficult, and I've had a lot of discussions with children. And one thing we've done together with the Gandhi Global Family and with some other partners like the Kerala Football Association, together with corporate partners, we're taking sports. We're taking sports to these kids. We're giving them opportunities. We had the most fabulous cricket tournament for one whole month in J&K, starting in Jammu and ending in Srinagar, went through all the districts. We had about 46 matches, ended up in the final. And what the children had to say was, why didn't we get this chance before? Now I'm going to be a Tendulkar, or I'm going to be this. It gives them something else. Why not? It gives them something to dream about. And same with football. We just recently had in Kerala, and we had some celebrities from UK that the corporates had brought. And Kerala, one part of Kerala is football mad. I didn't know that, but I realized that they were. And it was fantastic to see what sports can provide.
It can, yes.
And for the United Nations, we have a whole department for sports for peace and development. And for me, it's really important that we try to push sports. There are the sports that are being pushed at a high level. But look at all those children who never get to that. So let's try to provide them an opportunity to dream.
Coming to disaster management and to, calamities, natural or otherwise, what is your take on that? Is enough being done, or can we, in India?
Well, the United Nations Development Program is the one that deals with the disasters. But let's say in general, there can never be enough done. And I'm not talking only of India, everywhere. I mean, look at developed countries that have been struck by disasters. And disaster is a natural calamity, and you can be prepared. So preparedness is a big thing. Yes, we need to be prepared. And what being prepared does is that then the casualties later are fewer, and it is easier to get back to normal life. But you never know where a disaster is coming, from where it's coming, why. Well, why, some of them we know why, but then you don't even know where they're going to strike each time.
I think the crux is reaching out.
But to reach out, you need to have the preparedness. You need to be ready, so that, this motto, the Scouts motto, be prepared, I think that's a really important one. And I think that India is very strong, actually, in its preparedness, and it is getting much better. But then what can you do when things happen at such a large scale? It is rather difficult.
Like we saw the Chennai floods recently.
Now, who could have thought?
Who could have thought?
Who could have thought? Although, we don't know exactly why they happened, but they happened, and they caught everybody by surprise.
More of a nightmare, I mean.
Exactly. I mean, it was a real surprise, shock. But look at the people of India. They're reaching out to the people in Chennai in every way. I know there are groups right now who are buying saris to send to the women because there's the festival of Pongal coming up, and they don't want them to feel that they've lost everything. I mean, just these little things, people have a lot of warmth.
Ma'am, you've had this program about youth envoys. So, wherein you had an ambassador from a different country also coming in. Can you tell our viewers about this?
Yes, the Secretary General has a special envoy on youth, Alan Alandavi. He was here in India a few months ago, and what they're doing through the different agencies, through also the World Federation of UN Associations and many other channels, they're trying to go around having training groups. They train teachers. They train teachers to train students into how they can become better leaders. It's very close to the MUN in a way.
Vibrant youth.
Yeah,
yes.
It's vibrant youth. It's like the MUN, but not at the school level so much. It's a little higher. And they try to catch them at secondary school sometimes. And it's really important because the youth are empowered so that they can become part of the
instruments of change.
Instruments of change, and also part of the political systems, the NGO systems. We need the youth right now to come in and pick up the reins. And so this is a kind of
a movement really,
and the Secretary General is very, very interested in. For him, youth is an absolute priority. And so this particular envoy is going around and starting youth movements in the different countries. And that is indeed wonderful, because the training helps them learn how to communicate and be better leaders, or become leaders and then make more leaders. So I think youth for us, even in India, we work a lot through youth and youth organizations. They are the ones who come forward and help us do street theatre, Nukkad Natak, and they help us, as I said, in many malls.
And I believe stand-up comedies also you've been organizing.
Right. The stand-up comedies, but more also we have something called the Youth Changemakers Conclave.
Okay.
And every year, or sometimes twice a year, we do some really interesting things with an NGO that works with us on youth issues. We bring people from walks of life, different walks of life, celebrities, politicians, icons, and we get them together and they come and talk to the youth and tell them about their life. And try to show them, look, I was this and I'm this today. So
this is what you learned from me.
Yeah, this is what you learned from me. But probably tomorrow, if you do what you want to do, you can also become whatever you want. So,
it's a message.
Follow your dream. Things have changed now. Youth are following their dreams much more than before. It's not just a BA degree. They want to go beyond that.
I just read a quote recently by Ruskin Bond which said, if a song gave a shower and a gun grew a flower, the world would be nicer than most. Does it match to your United Nations motto?
Well, absolutely, because in fact, when you just said this, the vision that came to mind was that at the United Nations headquarters in New York, there is a sculpture, peace sculpture, which is, you can take it as disarmament or peace. There's a pistol gun, and the barrel is twisted around into a knot.
Oh, lovely.
So
how
that
beautiful.
just goes to show that don't use that for this, tie it up, and let's go to non-violence.
Dr. Kiran, if I may ask you a very personal question, what, in your opinion, is the success story behind Dr. Kiran Mehra-Kerpelman? Is it meeting deadlines? Is it commitment? Or is it a medley of all?
I think you kind of answered that. It is a medley of all. Let's face it, today there are very few people who just are born with a silver spoon. Even if you have a silver spoon, you need to take it in, keep it going, nurture what you have. I think I've been very lucky, but perhaps it's just I'm that kind of person. I feel that when you have a commitment, and the commitment may be to meet a deadline, you need to meet that deadline. You need to make that commitment. You need to keep that. And I think that's how people then also respect you. They know that if they have something to do, they come to you with an expectation. If you can't do it, you need to let them know you can't do it. But if you can do something for them, try to do it. For example, UNIC is not a funding agency. We don't have funds to give people. But if somebody comes to me with a project that is viable, I will find partners for them. I will go to corporates, I will go to other NGOs, I will find partners, because if I believe in what they're propagating, I will find partners for them. And I have to tell you that I also work very closely with faith-based organizations like the Brahma Kumaris, like the Nirankaris and others. I see they also have the same ideals as the United Nations. They in fact are accredited to the United Nations. And very often, when we have done things together, it is also to give a chance to some of those that I can't fund, but they will help them out. I just named two, but I mean there are several organizations, and when you see what Dr. Moini Giri is doing with the widows, it is absolutely fantastic. Those women need a better life. So when she comes to me and says, can we do something on this? I will never say no, because I know that this is something that they are committed to. So it's not just my commitment, it's also seeing what the other's commitment is and what can I do to hold their hand, and what can the United Nations Information Center do to provide them with that platform that they can do something.
It has indeed been a privilege being with you, ma'am, and I'm really taken and impressed with your enigmatic personality. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me and letting me take my views to your viewers. Thank you so much on behalf of the United Nations and from me personally.
Thank you, ma'am. It's been our pleasure.